Okay, this lecture will be about the human body systems. Before we get into the individual systems, we need to talk about the level of organization in multicellular organisms. So all multicellular organisms are made of many cells. And when cells work together to perform a function, we end up with tissues. So we can have epithelial tissue or connective tissue. And when a bunch of tissues work together to perform a function, we have an organ. And an organ is a group of tissues that work together to perform a function, such as sight. So we might have eyeball as an organ, or we might have liver or kidney. Plants do have organs. There are 3 organs in a plant. You can have roots, you can have stems, and you can have leaves. And obviously all the tissues in the leaf work to perform photosynthesis, so to collect sugar, or to collect light energy and convert it into chemical energy in the form of sugar. Animals have organ systems, which are groups of organs that perform closely related functions and work together, but plants do not have organ systems. Now, one of the things that you need to understand is that there are many organs that are part of multiple systems. So, you can't just say that one organ belongs in one system. So there are 11 systems of the body that work together to maintain homeostasis. And homeostasis is a maintenance of a stable internal environment. And so keeping our body temperature within a range is an example of homeostasis, and also our blood sugar being in a range is also an example of maintaining homeostasis. So when we get cold, we shiver, and when we get hot, we sweat in order to cool our body with evaporative cooling. Another example of ways we maintain temperature is when it gets very hot, our blood vessels dilate and blood moves towards the skin. And it helps us release heat. And in very cold temperatures, our body constricts our blood vessel and brings blood to the core of our body to keep our internal organs warm at the expense of our extremities, which we would consider our fingers or toes. So when it gets cold, our blood vessels constrict and bring blood to the center of our body, and when we get hot, our blood vessels dilate to bring blood towards the skin close to the surface so that we can lose heat. The nervous system includes the brain, the spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, and recognizes and coordinates the body's response to changes in its internal and external environment. The integumentary system includes skin, hair, nails, sweat, and oil glands, and serves as a barrier against infection and injury, and helps us regulate body temperature. Sweating would be one example of how we regulate body temperature, and also the idea that our blood vessels constrict and or expand and lead blood closer to the surface also helps us regulate body temperature. And our skin also provides protection against ultraviolet radiation from the sun. Our respiratory system includes our nose, pharynx, larynx, which is our voice box, our trachea, which is the tube that carries air to our lungs, and includes bronchi, which are the big branches, and bronchioles, which are the little branches, and then finally the lungs. And the respiratory system provides oxygen needed for cellular respiration and removes excess carbon dioxide from the body. The digestive system includes the mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small and large intestines, and the rectum, and converts food into simpler molecules that can be used by the cells of the body, and absorbs food and eliminates waste. I'm going to talk a little bit more about, in more detail about the digestive system. It's not going to be in this much detail on this test, but it would be for the fetal pig test, so it's good to go over it now. So if you see this little part here, this is the duodenum. This is where most of the digestion takes place. It's true that digestion starts in your mouth with salivary amylase breaking, an enzyme that breaks down carbohydrates, and it continues in our stomach. But most of the digestion takes place in the duodenum. And then for the rest of the small intestine, even though some digestion is taking place, mostly we have absorption of nutrients. And then in the colon, which is also known as the large intestine, our body absorbs water and solidifies our feces so that we don't become dehydrated. Now, in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about vitamins. There's nothing about vitamins on our local test. It used to be on the state test, and we have no idea what will be on the MISA. So I'm putting it in here just in case. but you do not need to worry about vitamins for your unit test. So vitamins are organic molecules that help regulate the body, and they often are coenzymes. Most of our vitamins come from food, but there are some bacteria that live in our digestive system that make vitamin K, and our skin makes vitamin D when we're exposed to sunlight. Vitamin D is a very common for us to not be making enough of, especially in the winter when we don't get enough exposure to sunlight up in the northern hemisphere. If we were living in the southern hemisphere, we probably wouldn't be as likely to be vitamin D deficient. There are two categories of vitamins, fat soluble and water soluble. Fat soluble vitamins like vitamin A, D, E, and vitamin K can be stored in our fatty tissues, but the water soluble vitamins can't be stored, and we need to eat them every day. In addition, when we are eating foods that are fat soluble or that have fat soluble vitamins, it's important also to be eating fat with that meal. So, those fat-free salad dressings are actually not good for us because they keep us from being able to absorb all of the nutrients in that salad. So we do want to have at least a little bit of fat with that salad. So vitamin A is found in yellow, orange, and dark green vegetables, and it's important for growth of skin cells and for night vision. Vitamin D is found in fish oil and eggs, but it's mostly made by our skin when we're exposed to sunlight and promotes bone growth and increases calcium and phosphorus absorption, which is why they often add it to milk, because milk has calcium in it. So if you have calcium and vitamin D at the same time, you'll absorb them better. Vitamin E is found in green leafy vegetables, seeds, and vegetable oils, and is an antioxidant that prevents cellular damage. Vitamin K is found in green leafy vegetables, but it's also made by bacteria that live in our intestines, and it's needed for normal blood clotting. And vitamin C is found in citrus fruits, tomatoes, peppers, broccoli, cabbage, and strawberries, and it's important for maintenance of cartilage and bone, and it's a potent antioxidant and important for healthy gums and tissue repair and wound healing. Minerals are inorganic nutrients that the body needs in small amounts. So calcium is necessary for health, and it's found in dairy products, salmon, sardines, kale, tofu, collard greens, legumes, and also almonds. And it's important for bone and tooth formation, blood clotting, and nerve and muscle function. Iron is found in meats, eggs, legumes, whole grains, and leafy green vegetables and dried fruit. And it's a component of our hemoglobin, and it's used in energy metabolism. Now, an interesting thing about calcium and iron, we need them both, but we cannot take calcium and iron supplements at the same time because they compete with each other. So you're supposed to take, calcium supplements with maybe your morning meal, and if you need iron supplements, which is very common, especially for women, you need to take them at a different meal than you're taking your calcium supplements because they do interfere with each other and compete. Magnesium is found in whole grains and leafy green vegetables, and it's important for activation of enzymes and protein synthesis. Our excretory system includes our skin, lungs, kidneys, ureters, urinary bladder, and urethra. And it eliminates waste products from the body in ways that maintain homeostasis. Now, the lungs might confuse you because that was also part of the respiratory system. But when they function to get rid of carbon dioxide when we exhale, that would be an example of getting rid of waste products. So remember I said earlier that there are many organs that really fit into multiple different systems. The skeletal system includes bones, cartilage, ligaments, and tendons, and it helps support the body, protect internal organs, allow movement, and store mineral reserves, and provides a site for blood cell formation. Particularly red blood cells are made in the bone marrow. The muscular system includes skeletal, smooth, and cardiac muscle. The skeletal muscle we call voluntary muscle. It's the muscles you can flex, like your biceps, triceps, gluteus maximus, quadriceps, hamstrings. Smooth muscle is found in our hollow organs. It's found in veins and arteries, but also in the bladder, the stomach, the esophagus, intestines. And the muscular system works with the skeletal system to provide voluntary movement and help circulate blood and move food through the digestive system. Now, in terms of circulating blood, the the cardiac muscle pumps the blood, but the blood has to go back to the heart. So, and the blood pressure, it has decreased by the time the blood needs to go back to the heart, so it can't really be pumped back to the heart. So when muscle cells like your legs or your arms contract, it actually kind of pushes blood back up toward the heart, and fortunately your veins have valves, so there's no backflow. So sometimes if you're standing still for a really, really long time, you can actually faint because your muscles are not contracting enough to push the blood back up to your heart, and then it doesn't end up getting pumped to your brain, and so it can make you kind of pass out. The circulatory system includes the heart and the veins and the arteries. So arteries go away from the heart and veins go towards the heart. And it also includes your blood, and it brings oxygen, nutrients, and hormones to cells, fights infection, removes cell waste, and helps regulate body temperature. So if you see a test question that's talking about transport, it's probably talking about circulatory system. Sometimes it can be hard to tell whether they're talking about the respiratory system or the circulatory system, but if they're talking about transport, it's probably circulatory system. And again, the circulatory system helps us regulate body temperature by having our blood vessels expand when it's hot to get blood close to the surface of our skin, or to contract when it is cold out to keep the blood towards the core of our body and away from our skin, and keeping our vital organs warm, like our brain and our heart and kidney and liver, etc. The endocrine system includes all of our glands: the hypothalamus gland, the pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, the parathyroids, the adrenal glands, the pancreas, the ovaries, and testes. And it controls growth and development and metabolism and maintains homeostasis by producing hormones. So if you're reading a test question and they're referring to glands, it's likely that they're talking about the endocrine system. However, there are several of these glands that do more than one thing. So the pancreas produces digestive enzymes, but it also produces insulin, which helps regulate our blood sugar. The thyroid gland produces hormones that regulate our metabolism. The thymus gland produces white blood cells, so that's really more part of our a different system that I'll talk about in a minute. We'll get back to that. So the reproductive system includes the testes, which produce sperm, the ovaries, which produce eggs, and the fallopian tubes, which are called oviducts in any animal that is not human. And by the way, the oviduct or fallopian tubes is where fertilization actually takes place. So the egg is made in the ovaries, but it floats downstream with the help of some cilia. And then the sperm swim upstream, and they fertilize the egg in the fallopian tubes. And then the fertilized egg travels down and implants in the walls of the uterus. And the function of the reproductive system is to produce reproductive cells. And in females, it nurtures and protects the developing embryo and fetus. So the lymphatic and immune systems work together, and they produce white blood cells, and they include the thymus, the spleen, lymph node, and lymph vessels. And it helps protect the body from disease and collects fluid lost from blood vessels and returns the fluid to the circulatory system. So when we're talking about collection of fluid lost from blood vessels, that's mostly the lymphatic system. The immune system obviously fights infections. And when I was talking about the thymus actually produces and matures white blood cells. So that helps for our immune system and helps us fight infection. So the thymus is considered a gland, and so it can actually probably be considered part of the endocrine system as well, but mostly we consider it a part of the immune system because that's its most important function.